YouTube channel to get all our latest videos. iRadio, your eye on South Sudan.
For information and entertainment, stay tuned to iRadio, your eye on South Sudan.
This is iRadio.
Sounds of the week on iRadio.
Another was a loan. The Zakani to Jai to Helmet Kalabatan, Tajum Sudan. I will hire Russell Gurush Define. The Banu Kaptalasha or Layakulu, with the last area. If it attacked Benal, Figurush Define for banking, but get a Romarba, Serena to Hadatuna, Fugal Sabat with Alamali. Lakin ma yakun kashi da mutaji baskulu yau ta gulu wala da mahafu jadi da tuma ta wal hasu shunu fi walaya mel ma badal 24 sa mahafu zo bisur marata bata fi yau al mahzus buruj bata nazar fil bank da ita mashe bugule mai na tafiya alegla al alam kullu indu maslam al buruj al khalif da shunu ne na junub a ma na mul maslam al buruj.
Sounds of the week on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. Live from Juba, on air and online.
This is iRadio News.
Hello, good afternoon. This is iRadio News. First, here are the headlines. 3 United Nations agencies have raised alarm over the risk of famine in 2 counties of Upper Nile State, where continued conflict and displacement have pushed thousands of people to the brink of starvation. UNICEF Ethiopia says half of the 130,000 people who have fled South Sudan's Nasir and Ulang for Ethiopia since March 2025 are children. And Warab Information Minister says some communities have surrendered their weapons, but others continue to resist despite the disarmament order's deadline being just days away. These stories and more coming to you in this news bulletin with me, Baria Johnon, and now the news in detail. United Nations agencies have raised alarm over the risk of famine in 2 counties of Upper Nile State, where continued conflict and displacement have pushed thousands of people to the brink of starvation. According to the latest report by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, communities in Nasir and Ulang counties are facing what they called the most severe levels of hunger, with 32,000 people already in catastrophic conditions. This is more than 3 times higher than previous estimates. In a statement issued by the World Food Programme, Food and Agriculture Organization and UNICEF, as seen by iRadio, the IPC update shows a sharp deterioration in food and nutrition conditions across conflict-affected areas of South Sudan. In Upper Nile State, 11 out of 13 counties are currently facing emergency levels of hunger due to ongoing fighting, aerial bombardments, and displacement that began in March. UNICEF country representative in South Sudan, Noala Skinner, said, and I quote, "These latest projections place a further 200,000 young children at high risk of malnutrition. Access challenges and health facility closure are reducing the chances of early treatment, while cholera is compounding an already dangerous situation." End quote. UNICEF says the number of children at risk of acute malnutrition across South Sudan has now risen to 2.3 million, up from 2.1 million earlier this year. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization country representative, Meshak Malo, also warns that renewed violence will prevent farmers from farming crops, worsening the hunger crisis. While some counties have seen improvements due to relative stability and improved crop production, 7.7 million people, about 57% of the population, continue to face crisis level or worse level of food insecurity across the country. In Upper Nile alone, 66% of the population, more than 1 million people, are now facing crisis, emergency, or catastrophic hunger levels. For its part, World Food Programme says humanitarian access in conflict-hit areas remains severely limited. Mary Ellen, WFP's country director, says conflict tears communities apart and drives food prices up. Mary stated that right now it is critical that their teams access Upper Nile to deliver life-saving food before famine takes hold. Aid agencies warn that time is running out for thousands of families caught in the crossfire, especially as the lean season sets in and cholera spreads in affected areas of Upper Nile and Unity States. Humanitarians are calling for urgent and unhindered access to deliver assistance and avert a worsening crisis. UNICEF Ethiopia says half of the 130,000 people who have fled South Sudan's Nasir and Ulang for Ethiopia since March 2025 are children. A report by UNICEF Ethiopia titled Ethiopia Refugee Response Impact of South Sudan Crisis states that escalating conflicts and violence in South Sudan's Upper Nile state have forced at least 35,000 South Sudanese to flee to Gambela, Ethiopia since March 5th, 2025. Madrama James files this report.
According to the report, this latest influx significantly intensified an already massive humanitarian crisis in the region. It says that the ongoing clashes between the South Sudan People's Defense Forces SSPDF and SPLA in opposition and White Army in Nasir and in Ulang counties have internally displaced over 130,000 people, predominantly women and children, in South Sudan in addition to those crossing borders. It is stated that as of March 31st, 2025, Gambela was already home to 395,212 South Sudanese refugees across 7 overcrowded camps. With fighting continuing near the border, the number of new arrivals is expected to rise, further straining local resources. The report stated that new arrivals are currently sheltering in Burbey Kebelel in Wathua Wereda, near the South Sudan border, often having crossed the Baro River to reach safety. Added that conditions facing these asylum seekers are there, with no basic services available. The UN Ethiopia reported that a multi-sectoral needs assessment on April 16, 2025 confirmed that food, shelter, and essential relief items and clean drinking water are their most urgent needs. The approaching rainy season, July-September, brings a high risk of flooding, threatening to significantly worsen the situation in these vulnerable border locations. This compounded by an ongoing cholera outbreak in Gambela, which began on February 11, 2025. As of May 4, 2025, 229 of the reported 2,115 cholera cases were among asylum seekers, highlighting the acute health risk. South Sudan is also facing a significant cholera outbreak, increasing concern about cross-border transmission. The extreme violence in South Sudan, including aerial bombardments in civilians areas, has led to severe protection concern among the displaced. A preliminary rapid assessment by UNICEF and partners identified over 170 children as separated and more than 50 as unaccompanied. According to the report, UNICEF, in collaboration with its implementing partners, is actively supporting flood emergency preparedness and response plans in Gambela. The report says that these efforts aim to address the critical needs of both the host communities and South Sudanese refugees across vital sectors, including health, nutrition, wash, education, and child protection programs. It concluded that continued support is essential to address this escalating humanitarian crisis and ensure the protection and well-being of those displaced by conflict.
Thank you, Madrama James. Authorities in Western Equatorial State say 88 internally displaced persons, mainly children, have arrived in Yambio from Nyadengere Payam after they spent 5 months hiding in the bush and surviving on wild fruits. The displacement was triggered by renewed fighting in the area after the removal of former Governor Alfred Futuyu Karaba from office in February 2025. The unrest forced civilians to flee for their safety, with many seeking refuge in the forest. Speaking upon the arrival of the IDPs, State Minister of Local Government and Law Enforcement, James Severino Morris, confirmed the reception of the IDPs. He also said around 40 others are expected to arrive from Bangasubu Payam. Severino is urging humanitarian partners to join hands in supporting the IDPs.
This evening we have seen the number of IDPs, displaced people from Uganda. Out of them we have 88 children and some adults. But this is not the only number we have. We have also still some adults in Mokondo, about 40. And there are many people in the bush who are still coming on the way. And then also in Riongu, we saw a good number of people there who came from Jangere. In the Ringas as well, we have also people there. So the number of people who are displaced in the Jangere, I think is quite enormous. We are in contact with them and they are on the way coming to the various locations within Yando County. The state government itself will do what it can do, and also our partners, we urge our partners within the state to support these citizens who have come.
Michael Matthew, a displaced teacher from Najendere Primary School, revealed that 2 children tragically died on the way due to hunger during their journey.
We are in displaced people since January up to June. Now we'll be spending 5 months in the bush, depending on where the fruits and the other resources. So even we lost 2 of our children because of hunger and the lack of medications. So we face a lot of challenge which we cannot explain, that actually we bless God, we have reached where people is. And we knew that our life, those children will be existing. So we have a lot to be said, but now I cannot manage to say everything.
The acting chairperson of the State Relief and Rehabilitation Commission, Thomas Siringa Paul, stated that 90% of the newly arrived IDPs were aged between 5 and 18 years. Siringa added that the IDPs have endured nearly 3 months of survival by relying solely on wild fruits. Similarly, he appealed to humanitarian organizations to intervene and provide much needed assistance to the IDPs, adding that more displaced individuals are expected to arrive in Yambio.
We have just received 88 IDPs who ran from Najangara, but 90% are the children, aged from 5 to 18. And these IDPs here, they've spent more than 3 months on the way, from January up to now. This is when they arrived. And when they were coming, they were using the forest. And the soil depend on the wild fruits. So I urge my partners, the international organizations, both UN agencies, international organization, the national organization, you have to come and rescue the situation of these innocent people. I have to inform you that you have to know more are still coming on the way.
You are listening to iRadio Afternoon News. Warrap Information Minister says some communities have surrendered their weapons, but others continue to resist despite the disarmament order's deadline being just days away. Early this week, the South Sudan People's Defense Forces issued a one-week ultimatum to armed youth in Warrap State and Mayom County of Unity State to voluntarily surrender their weapons, warning of forceful disarmament if they fail to comply. The order came as the army dispatched an unspecified number of forces to Arab State. This directive follows President Salva Kiir's recent declaration of a 6-month state of emergency in both areas in response to escalating communal violence and insecurity. Speaking to iRadio this morning, Warrap Information Minister Mamer Bath Marol said the forces tasked with disarming the civil population are now assembled in the Tony South County.
Yeah, the deployment is already done. The forces are now assembled in Tony South, and I cannot tell you the number because this is security issue. So I cannot tell you the detail of the forces, but I can assure you that the forces are now assembled there. They are already there. They are moving on well. We now when there is any insecurity somewhere, then we take forces there. The security situation in the state is calm and normal.
Minister Bath said some areas have complied with the disarmament order and have surrendered their guns. He added that those still resisting have 7 more days to do so, or else they will be met with maximum force.
We talked to all the chiefs and local authorities, for all of them to talk to the youth, armed youth, to put down the gun. Now, there are some areas where the gun are already put down by the armed youth. So there are some areas now that comply with those advice, and they put down their weapons. Meanwhile, other areas are still making resistance. But until the time elapsed, because there was an ultimatum laid out by the PLA military headquarters at the CDF, and that ultimatum 7 days has not yet elapsed until now. But when 7 days elapsed, and then now, if they fail to comply yet, then now they will be met with the maximum forces.
According to the SSPDF, the disarmament forces will operate within the legal framework of the presidential decree and its terms of reference. The operation is intended to restore peace and stability in the region, which has seen a surge in deadly intercommunal clashes and lawlessness in recent months. And finally, a United Nations official says hundreds of thousands of people are slowly starving in Kenya refugee camps after U.S. funding cuts reduced food ratios to their lowest ever levels. Photos shared on BBC showed malnourished children fill a 30-bed ward at Kakuma's hospital, a clear indication that the impact of food ratio cut is beginning to hit the refugees hard. A home to an estimated 300,000 refugees, Kakuma have been a haven to people who fled harsh conditions, including violence and persecution in countries across Africa and the Middle East, including South Sudan. The U.S. had provided around 70% of the funding for the WFP's operation in Kenya. Following the funding cuts, WFP was compelled to slash the refugees ratio to 30% of the minimum recommended amount a person should eat to stay healthy. Felix Okech, WFP's head of refugee operations in Kenya, told the BBC, and I quote, "If we have a protracted situation where this is what we can manage, then basically we have a slowly starving population," end quote. Until this year, the UN was giving around $40 million in cash directly to refugees in Kenya's camps each month, intended to allow families to buy basic supplies. WFP officials have over the past month warned that the cutbacks could have devastating consequences for already vulnerable communities. Previously explaining the situation, WFP's deputy country director in Kenya said the agency had been forced into a painful position. You're listening to iRadio News, and now to the regional and international news with Madrama James.
The global nuclear watchdog has found Iran has failed to meet its non-proliferation obligation for the first time in 20 years. A resolution passed by the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency carries the threat of an eventual referral to the UN Security Council. It follows a report from the agency last week which cited a general lack of cooperation from Iran and raised concern over secret activities and undeclared nuclear material in areas which have long been under investigation. Elsewhere, a Chinese national has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for damaging undersea cable connecting Taiwan's main island and the Penghu Island in the Taiwan Strait. The man, identified by his surname Wang, was the captain of Togolese registered vessel Hong Thai 58. The Tainan District Court's verdict on Thursday marks the first sentencing after reports in recent years of undersea cables around Taiwan being severed. Finally, a curfew is in place for a second night in Los Angeles after nearly a week of unrest in the city over U.S. immigration raids. Multiple people were arrested for violating the downtown curfew shortly after it came into effect at 20 local time on Wednesday, the BBC's U.S. partner CBS News reported. Nearly 400 people have been arrested in LA since protests began on Friday, including 330 undocumented migrants and 157 people arrested for assault and obstruction, including one for the attempted murder of a police officer.
Thank you, Madrama James. And now to the sports news with Lasuba Memo.
Thanks, Baria Johnon. In the world of sports, Club World Cup officials will use an accelerated semi-automated offside technology that will tell them to stop the game immediately if a player who is more than 10 centimeters offside touches the ball. It is one of the most significant initiatives being introduced for the 32-team tournament in the US and is aimed at reducing needless delays. Assistant referees will receive the notification instantly rather than having to wait for the technology to check positions and distances, as is the case with semi-automated offside systems used in most major leagues. SAR was introduced into the Premier League on April 12th, before which the video assistant referee made all offside rulings. Brighton have agreed a €29.78 million deal with Olympiacos for 18-year-old forward Charalampos Kostolas. The teenager was undergoing a medical with the club on Thursday ahead of signing a 5-year contract that will start on 1st July. The deal represents by some distance the highest fee ever received by a Greek club, beating the €16.6 million Wolves paid to sign Daniel Podence from Olympiacos in 2020. In tennis, Britain's Sonny Cattell missed the chance to reach a home quarter-final when she suffered a tough defeat by American Amanda Anisimova at Queen's. World number 50 Cattell was overpowered by the 8th seed in just 1 hour and 5 minutes, losing 6-1, 6-3. Cattell had secured the biggest win of her career on Monday against world number 16 Daria Kasatkina, but a third win over a top 20 player in her career and a second in the West London tournament proved a bridge too far. That's all in the world of sports. Back to you, Baria Johnon.
You're listening to iRadio News, and to end this bulletin, here are the headlines once again. 3 United Nations agencies have raised alarm over the risk of famine in 2 counties of Upper Nile State, where continued conflict and displacement have pushed thousands of people to the brink of starvation. UNICEF Ethiopia says half of the 130,000 people who have fled South Sudan's Nasir and Ulang for Ethiopia since March 2025 are children. And Warrap Information Minister says some communities have surrendered their weapons, but others continue to resist despite the disarmament order deadline being just days away. That's the end of iRadio Afternoon News. If there is a story or an event you would like iRadio to cover or report about, please send us a text message on +211 925 28 7870. It's also our WhatsApp number. Follow us on X at iRadio Juba, like our Facebook page, iRadio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at iRadio South Sudan. You can also visit our website and listen to us online at www.iradio.org. Stay tuned for the news in Arabic at 5:30. I am Baria Johnon. Thanks for listening.
Of the week on